Hi, this is Tom Smith, and I just want to talk to you about breathing pattern disorders and also diaphragmatic breathing. Now, diaphragmatic breathing is really important because it fully utilises the diaphragm, which separates the thoracic cavity and the abdominal cavity. In our modern world today, we are exposed to many forms of stressors. We obviously use a lot of mobile phones, and we may sit at a desk for long periods of time using a computer. And there is research out there that suggests that the use of visual display terminals and increased mobile phone usages heavily influences the position of the head on the shoulders. Also is that this can encourage thoracic breathing, which there is a strong association with thoracic breathing, forward head posture as well. There has also been research with students. There was a group of 12 students which were quite familiar with text messaging. And what they did is they used things like skin conduction, surface EMG to the thumb and the upper trapezius. And they also studied breathing patterns, respiratory rates, things like that. And 83% of these individuals were tested showed that when they received a text is that they would freeze, they would hold the breath, they would see more shallow breathing, and the surface EMG to the thumb and the shoulder would go up, and this would change their respiratory rate. And so obviously we know that mobile phone usage is obviously heavily used today, and it's that anticipation of text messages which can lead to those breathing pattern disorders. And that's just obviously many other reasons, but the reasons I'm explaining it today is that there are lots of other bombardments of stressors. Mental health is on the rise. Things like depression and anxiety can all have massive effects on your respiratory rate. And when we're under a stressful situation, what we tend to do is we tend to shallow breathe, and we tend to breathe a lot quicker. And what this does is it actually increases the tone in the accessory muscles of respiration. So really I'm holding my neck there because I want to obviously explain that the pec minor will potentially overwork, the sternocleidomastoid muscle will overwork, and also the scalenes, the anterior, middle and posterior aspect of the scalenes. And all these muscles have their role to play in bringing the head forwards when they're overworked. And if we can imagine as if we're breathing with these faulty breathing patterns for thousands of times a day, this can potentially have a predisposing factor to your aches and pains. Now, we don't want to say is that these are the underlying causes or the overarching cause to your pain, but if obviously you have neck, head and shoulder pain, it may be more of a factor. But as we know is that psychological factors do have a big role to play in perception of pain and persistent pain as well. So if we can obviously help dial that down a little bit by encouraging you to breathe with your diaphragm, helping to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the opposite side of the fight or flight response. Now, the fight or flight response is part of the sympathetic nervous system. It's all part of the autonomic nervous system. And what we do is when we're under a stressful situation, we either fight, flight or freeze, which can all have the ability to change the way we breathe. The breathing rate gets quicker, it's shallower, and we tend to breathe also through your mouth. And when you're breathing through your mouth, the tongue doesn't sit on its physiological rest position, which is in the arch of the upper palate. And what we tend to do is the mouth opens, it switches off the connection of the infrahyoid muscles in the neck, and it maybe does have a tendency to throw the head forwards. So the diaphragmatic breathing is really good, and it helps to encourage you positive habits with your breathing. And sometimes people find this really challenging because obviously it's habit for many, many years. There can be things like dysbiosis in your gut, there can be infections in the gut, there can also be people that may have had surgery in the abdomen, cesarean sections for ladies having their children. These can all things that can affect the use of the abdominal wall and maybe allow it to not function or integrate with the brain. So we may need to do some external cueing in clinic. But what you can do at home is to practice diaphragmatic breathing, just simply laying down on your floor or on your bed to some nice relaxing music. I try to encourage people to use something like classical music or shamanic dream type music or something with a second beat. We obviously don't want to promote you doing these exercises with AC/DC or rock metal music, even though you might find that relaxing, but it will help encourage deep relaxation. So find a space on the floor, on a mat or on your bed, laying on your back with your knees bent. You can, if you need, to use a pillow under the back of your head if you find this uncomfortable. But the reason why people find this challenging is because they just don't know how to undo a pattern or a habit. And the way how I do it is with some external cueing by using a can of baked beans or a dumbbell. At home, you can use a can of baked beans. I've got a flask here which is sufficient enough to demonstrate what I'm trying to say here. But place it on the abdomen and you want to take a deep breath in, ideally through your nose, and then you breathe out through your mouth. But as you breathe in, you want to push the weight to the ceiling with your stomach, allowing the stomach to expand. And as you breathe out, you want to obviously let the weight drop down. And having a weight there just actually helps you to basically push the weight up to the ceiling. And it's just a bit of an easier way of learning how to do it. I hope this was helpful. If you have any concerns or you just need some extra help, feel free to get in touch and I'll speak to you soon. Many thanks.